Hi, how are you tonight? I'm Roberta Colasino, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator here in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. I come to you live every Wednesday night with a free crafting class, and as advertised this morning, today I'm going vintage. I love the vintage look. I make a lot of vintage journals. In fact, I'm thinking that a couple of the cards that we make tonight might actually be transformed into a topper for a journal cover. Or I might decide to take the card and enlarge it, make the same one but make it bigger. So I know it's not everybody's thing, and of course you can make these cards and not make them vintagey, and I'm not going to make them too vintagey, and in case you don't even know what that means, I'll be explaining, so don't worry about it. I'm going to go right ahead and put the camera down so that we can get going. Hang on just a second. Oh, right, I put the camera backwards again this week on purpose, by the way. Not by accident, on purpose. A little bit different. Just no way of knowing if it's working. Well, there's my ceiling. You really don't want to see that. Okay, I've got the ceiling fan going. It rained, and as often when it rains, it just kind of makes things a little bit stickier. So instead of making it nicer and cooler, it makes it sticky. Okay, oh, there we go. We weren't focused for a minute. Okay, that does look all right. It's a little off-center, but I think it's fine. All right, I brought out my calendar. I probably should put it, I wonder if I can do this. Instead of putting it facing forward, since you're seeing it from the other angle. So today is June 18th. This was given to me by one of my classroom aides, a lady named Kim, many, many years ago. And I decided to pull it out and maybe have it out here because sometimes it even helps me when I'm going through videos, not to have to look at the small print, but to see a date popping right up. Okay, so first thing, just a little bit of business. So this is me, 11 Lake Stamper, and you are, I assume, catching me here live or on the replay here at my Facebook group, 11 Lake Stamper. Hang on, because I'm not seeing me yet. Happens every time. I shouldn't panic, but I do. There we go. Okay. So I also now have a YouTube channel by the same name, and I know I've mentioned this before, but just so you know what's going on. I also now have a YouTube channel by the same name, and I know I've mentioned this before, but just so you know what's going on. I also now have a YouTube channel. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Sorry. I knew I missed a step somewhere. So the YouTube channel is also called 11 Lake Stamper, and this is because I wanted to have a YouTube channel anyway, don't get me wrong, but I was kind of really forced into it when Facebook announced that they were going to start deleting all Facebook Live videos. So they started with the ones that you made after they made the announcement. They only allowed those to stay on 30 days, but they know that some people have years worth of videos, so they're giving us a little leeway, but I think you have to put in for a request if you want up to 6 months to get them all downloaded. And it's taking much longer than I thought. I thought once I got into a routine it would go quickly, but it's honestly not. So anyway, so this is a public group that you can join, and you can catch my videos here live. You can catch them on the replay, at least for a while. Excuse me. So the video that you're seeing right now will be deleted in 30 days, but it will be uploaded tonight to YouTube. If not tonight, tomorrow morning. All right, you can reach me at 11lakestamper@gmail.com, and you can shop with me at www.rcolasino.stampinup.net. Okay, we have a 60% up to 60% off sale going on right now on what we call last chance products. So these are things that have been retired. When the new catalog came out, they were retired, or they might have been from Celebration, or they might have been from the spring catalog, the January to April catalog, I think it was. So some of the things are discounted up to 60% off, some 40%, some 30%. And I know for those of you who, excuse me, and I am going to be doing a lot of that tonight. I had almost no water today. I didn't get a chance to bring water up here with me tonight. I don't have a cough drop. I don't have anything. So who knows where this voice is going to go. I'm saying this because anytime there's someone new watching, they should know this as well. So because a bundle, whenever you buy a stamp and punch bundle or a stamp and die bundle, a bundle is always a savings of 10% off of buying the stamp set separately from the die or the punch. If you buy the suite, excuse me, you still don't get any more than the 10% off. But sometimes when things are on last chance, that used to be called the clearance rack, but they don't have that anymore, they will offer the bundle. Because, hey, if you want to buy the bundle, they want to sell you the bundle. But the reality is that the discount, if the stamp set and the punch or dies are discounted, you're better off not getting the bundle because you'll save more. If you buy the bundle, you don't get the discounted price on the stamp set and the dies. It's a little tricky. So just please be aware of that. If you have any questions, just reach out and let me know. Okay, we also have right now a 50% off sale on sweets, all sweets, and sweet products. So that means if you decide to buy a bundle that is part of a suite, not all bundles are, if you decide to buy a bundle that's part of a suite, you'll get 50% off. Buy one, get one 50% off. So you're going to pay full price for one and 50% off for the other one. You're paying full price for the highest priced one and getting 50% off the lowest priced one. So don't do something like buy 2 suites or buy 2 bundles, but don't buy a suite and a $25 stamp set, because you're going to get 50% off on the stamp set, not the bundle. You see what I'm saying? And not the suite. So just again, be a wise shopper. All right, this is my daily creative prompts calendar. You do not have to follow the dates. I've said that before. If this gets really bad, I'll just excuse myself for a minute, put on some music, talk amongst yourselves, and I'll go get some water. I'm hoping it won't be too bad. I should just keep water up here even if it's warm. I should just keep a couple of bottles up here. So anyway, if you participate in my prize, I don't know, I've never called it Prize Patrol, but we could call it that. You win a prize if you do any of the things that are in pink, and you do not have to do them on the dates. You can win 1 prize per month. So choose one. You can do all of them, but you can only win 1 prize per month, and you have to post a picture of what you made here in this group. Okay, real quick, I just wanted to show you. I made 2 cards last week, both really fun folds. You know, sometimes fun folds are not so fun. These 2 really are. I like them a lot. But when I made this one, I did stamping on the dog. I decided, I don't know, I had it in my head. I was thinking of no-line watercoloring, and so I stamped him in like basic beige or something, and it just looked awful. I wish now that I had not thrown it out, because to see them side by side, you realize that stamping this in black was absolutely the way to go, and I just wasn't thinking straight, basically. So I wanted you to see that, even though I did post a picture of what that looked like all fixed up. All right, so I think that everybody knows that vintage just means old. Typically, it doesn't necessarily mean as old as an antique. It used to be things that were considered antiques had to be 50 years old or older. They've changed that. Now it has to be 100 years old. That makes me feel better, because then I'm not an antique, whereas before I was. But vintage, you know, might mean like the 60s, the 50s, these days even the 70s, and I've heard some people call the 90s vintage, which I think is pushing it just a little bit. And things that are vintage, or what we call shabby chic sometimes, tend to be not bright, not colorful, not have a lot of white in them. And sometimes crafters will make the things that they make look even older or more distressed than they are. So as an example, when I make my journals, I'm very often using things that actually are antiques. They're things that I found in thrift shops, or they're vintage, and you know, the paper is yellowed or browned around the edges or whatever. But sometimes if you don't have that look going, you want to give it that look. And so that might even involve you, what am I trying to say? Tearing things. And I like to tear paper. Not all of the people who come to my class like to tear paper. Hello, Danny. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I think you're new to 11 Lake Stamper. Welcome. All right, so I will be edging some things in brown. I'll be using my sponge dauber and probably crumb cake. I don't want it to be super dark brown. All right, and I will be tearing some things. I'm missing one thing that I have, and I will put a link because Stampin' Up! Doesn't sell anything like it, and it's pretty cool. So if you've watched other Stampin' Up! Demonstrators, they very often distress the edges of paper by using their scissors, which is fine. Tim Holtz sells a product called a distresser, and it's this little round thing. that has, I don't know, I'm guessing pieces of metal inside. It's hard to explain. It sort of looks like a flower. I'll find it and I'll put a link, and then I have to find mine because I just ran into it the other day, meant to put it with my things, and I didn't. So now that was days ago and I don't remember where I left it. So let's see. For this particular card, I'm using gray granite as a card base. And then I have some pieces of, I brought it all up here with me so that I could tell you. And then I don't know where I put it. So this is the back side of this paper here, and this is that, I think it's the Country Lace or the Country Woods. There are two of them. They were part of a suite last year. So we're going to use both of those. So what I did was I used the lighter colored side over here and the darker colored side over here, and I used the Eyelet 3D embossing folder to emboss this DSP. So instead of using cardstock that had a color to it, I used the DSP, which has a very mild pattern to it, but it's kind of a grungy-ish pattern, all right? Now, so what I can also do, and I won't overdo it, but what I can also do is take the crumb cake, although I don't know if it's gray granite. Maybe I should use gray granite. I tend to think of brownish because things don't necessarily gray when they get old. Well, except your hair, that turns gray. So I'm just going to take the gray granite and the sponge dauber. I know it has brown on it, but it should be fine. And I'm just going to go around the edges. And actually, I'm going to end up tearing up these edges a little bit anyway, so I may have to go back and do this again. So this is just another thing. If you've seen paper that you find, like some old loose leaf paper that you've had in the house for years, the edges have started to turn brown. That's kind of what I'm doing, because this obviously is not vintage paper. It's Stampin' Up! 2024. So that's not vintage yet. Someday it probably will be, but it's not yet. So I'm just going to vintage that up a little bit, okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I think this one, I'm trying to remember exactly what I had in mind. I saw something on Pinterest that gave me inspiration, but I'm not following it exactly. I think this one's going to go on top of this one, so I don't know if I like the gray, though. For some reason, I feel like it should be brown, but I'm going to stick with the gray, and when it's all done, I'll decide which I like better. And I could make it all match. If I end up using this on a journal cover, I could make it all match by making my journal cover some shade of gray. That's entirely possible, or maybe even using some of this paper. I do love to use my Stampin' Up! Products in my journals, especially if it's retired, and I don't necessarily want to use it in classes. All right, so we've got that. Then we've got this pink layer, which is Pretty in Pink, which is one of the colors. This was a paper that you could not buy as a customer. This was something that was given. It was like a sales achievement. If you sold a certain amount of dollars worth in a month or whatever it was, you got a pack of this paper. It was basically a recolor of a paper that was blue and country corners or country something. Really pretty stamp set and paper. And it had those great sort of elongated hexagon dies. And as long as I'm at it, I'm just going to do everything. So we're going to do this too, because this is another layer. Right. I did a lot of stuff ahead of time so that you didn't have to watch me doing the tedious stuff, but I just didn't have time to do this. Call me silly, but somewhere in the middle I wanted to eat lunch and maybe, have a few minutes for myself. Okay, so now let's close that up. I have my ceiling fan on, and just so you know, leaving your ink pads open for any period of time can dry them out no matter what, but the ceiling fan being right over them will really dry them out. Really dry them out. Oh, I forgot one. So I have this little scrap of cardstock, the other side, like this, and I just used this stamp here from, it's a retired set, I admit, but it was one of my favorites, Flowers of Friendship. So I have this stamp from Flowers of Friendship. It's just kind of like a really distressed print thing. So I stamped that on here. And I think I accidentally used crumb cake when I meant to use the gray, but again, it's not a biggie. And as long as it looks older and kind of distressed, it works fine for me. We had, I don't know where anybody's from, but here in upstate New York, And I think in New York State in general, we had the most amount of rain we'd ever had in one day on this day in June, or in the entire month of June, since like, I want to say he said like 1912 or something, a long time ago. And the New York State Thruway actually flooded, and parts of it had to be shut down, and that's, that doesn't happen too often. All right, so I could absolutely just leave this as it is, all right, and just say I vintaged it, I distressed it, I made it look older. Absolutely could do that. But if we really want to get, like crazy about it, and I don't consider it crazy, we're going to take this, and boy, do I wish I had that tool because it works so much faster. And it's definitely going to rip because of the embossing. So spots where I hit like one of the little petals, it is going to rip. And I'm really okay with that. But you don't have to do this. You could make this card just totally pretty without doing anything to the edges at all, and using brighter colors or whatever. And sometimes I think, to be honest, that muted colors, especially for like a sympathy card or something like that, I think muted colors are a good idea. So this could be a sympathy card. I wouldn't send a distressed sympathy card to someone, just so you know. I would make this without all the schmutz. It's a little harder to do this with your scissor than it is with that tool. But again, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And then some people will actually take a corner and kind of curl it over so that when it's up, when it's laid down on here, it looks a little bit different. I don't have to distress that side because I'm covering it up anyway. So I didn't terribly distress it. I didn't make it crazy. Some people would just tear part of the top off. It's, it's all up to you. And then some people would go back and do more of this. And, I don't want to do overkill. Where's my glue? Okay. So anyway, we did have a lot of rain today. There were actually, my phone kept making these, sounds, terrible sounds, scared the cats half to death because they were both sitting with me, and all of a sudden that thing that went off that sounds like a foghorn, saying that we had a flood alert and that this was a possible life-threatening situation. We don't get that here very often, except maybe during bad snowstorms. But in June, we don't hear about too many life-threatening situations. We don't have hurricanes here. We've had a couple, but nothing like what they get in Florida and the Carolinas and places like that. All right, when you're gluing something down that is embossed like this, you do have to use a little bit more glue than you might normally use, and then because I distressed it and everything, I want to make sure it stays down. So again, it's a different look. It's different from my typical card. I'm the first to admit that, but it was the mood that I was in today. So here it is. Like, I would not do this at a coffee and a card class without offering the option, obviously, to not distress it, because most of my ladies, I don't think, would care for this. I love tearing paper. Maybe it's just like a therapeutic kind of thing, ripping things up. I will say that on the night before recycling day, when I take my, what do you call it, box cutter knife and cut up all the boxes, there's something about that. I don't know if that makes me sound disturbed or not. I hope not. But there's something about it, just doing all that, taking those boxes down and then seeing that nice pile of flat boxes and bringing it out to the recycling bin. I don't know. Maybe I'm nuts. Who knows? I was talking to one of our artists at the art gallery, where I gallery sit, about his pieces. He does abstract art, and he actually used to work for the same school district that I used to work for. And I said, I'm beginning to be concerned that I might be a little disturbed. I said, because I hear people talking about seeing flowers in this painting. He says, you see something different, don't you? I said, I do. He says, tell me what you see. And I said, well, I see some bones. I see skeletal things. I see a set of teeth. He says, you're right, they're in there. I said, but now that the other ladies told me that they saw flowers, I can't not see the flowers. But he said, he says, if you watch shows like Criminal Mind or you like Stephen King mysteries, and I do, he said, your mind might go there first. He says, I don't think it means that you're, like in need of psychiatric care or anything. So that made me feel so much better. All right, so I guess we really do need to kind of keep this up, though, because distressing some and not the rest just doesn't seem, and cardstock is not as easy to distress, I'll tell you. Now, you know what I did bring in today, though? So I do have these, remember these from scrapbooking days, the decal scissors, and there are the pinking shear scissors, which you really want to use as opposed to using your mom or your wife's or your own sewing pinking shears. You can take these and you can cut along the edges of something, and it's not quite like tearing, it's not quite like distressing. All right, so I'll do that on this one. I don't mind. It's a little bit different, so they're not matchy-matchy, but I don't care about that. And because these scissors aren't the best, they don't always cut the best, especially if you're just trying to cut on the edge. They end up tearing a little bit anyway, so you sort of get a double effect. You get the decal effect, but you also get the distressed effect. So that's kind of a cool thing to do, for sure. Okay, and then I would probably just add a little more ink to this to distress it some more. So that's kind of cool. That's another way of doing it. And it's certainly a little bit faster and less, tedious than the other way. I almost forgot about those. Glad I remembered. So this is going to go here, and this is going to go on top of it. And let's decal this one too, since we did the other one. Why not, right? In which case I shouldn't have taken the time to distress it, because now I'm just going to have to redo it. It cuts better if you're further away from the edges, but I don't want to change the size of it too much, so I'm really cutting on the edges. I can also tell that I'm not cutting on quite a straight line like I did with the trimmer. But then again, that probably is okay too. So you'll have to comment and let me know if you like this look or if it's really not for you, or if you would like to maybe see this card in its sort of original undistressed version. I don't know if I could probably make one. I kind of used up some of the paper though, so I'm not sure where I'm at with the paper. And really just think of this too, if nothing else, even if this is not your cup of tea, it's a card sketch. You're seeing a card sketch here, okay? And it's funny because right now these look like they're about the same size, and on my original, just playing with it with paper, this was a much smaller strip. And I probably should have cut it, but again, it doesn't matter because you guys don't know what it looked like on my trial run, so I guess it doesn't matter. But this is definitely a card sketch, and for those of you who don't know, a card sketch is basically, if you're a scrapbooker, like a scrapbook layout, it's just kind of saying, okay, we're going to have, I think I went in the wrong direction. There we go. I'm going to have, two pieces doing this and a piece that's this narrow over here, and then I'm going to have a layer here and a layer here, and you could apply this to a birthday card with balloon paper. It doesn't have to, you don't have to think of it and think of this card alone as how it would work. Just think of it with almost anything. All right, so I'm going to glue that down. I keep looking at that like it's a gatefold, and I'm expecting that it should open, and of course it's not going to open. I think the intention was for it to go this way, but the pattern goes the other way, and I don't think I care. I don't think I'm worried about it at all, and I might want to bring it a tiny bit lower down here. Okay. And then this is just going to go on top. Now this, I had a couple of thoughts for this. I think they're just embellishments. So if I remember, but I won't. So if I remember, I'll add them later. But my rememberer isn't as good as it used to be. So if I can find, I'm thinking pearls, because when I think of pearls, I think of vintage. That pearls are timeless though. You can wear pearls in 2025, and they wore pearls in the 1800s. And that's what I love about pearls. You can never go wrong with pearls. Here they are. Okay. Oh, these are the iridescent pearls. And then we have just the regular pearl basic jewels, they're called. And they're just not iridescent. So since they didn't have iridescent pearls way back when, I'll go with the regular pearls. Still don't know where my take your pick tool is. It has not showed its face. I hope I didn't leave it someplace, but I don't think I've been any place to leave it. All right, I'll try my tweezers, but sometimes that makes them go flying. Let's glue this down first. All right, but now, do I want to distress that too, or can we just leave that as it is? Why don't we just leave that one as it is? Have some variation. You know, so here's the thing. There are no rules. I make it up as I go along. I try to do a trial run ahead of time just to find out if the card's going to really stink. But other than that, I make it up as I go along, and I make decisions about what I'm going to do, and then halfway through I totally change my mind, and that is absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I've been telling the people who take my classes for ages now that there are no rules. These are too big, and these are a little bit too small, and apparently there were no mediums. So I'm going to go with small because I don't like big. The only thing with the tweezers is that sometimes something goes flying. If it slips out of the tweezers, it just, shoo, you know, it's like it becomes a projectile. And I'll find it like months later tucked in a corner almost under the carpeting or something. Okay, so let's do 3. You know, we're supposed to do things in odd numbers. It's more pleasing to the eye or whatever. I don't know. That I believe. That seems to be a thing. All right, so those just add a nice touch of pretty to them. I like that a lot. All right, so now the next thing was we needed a sentiment, and I grabbed this, which really just as a reminder, because I don't want to use this. It's too kind of new and fancy, and I hadn't even picked a sentiment yet, to be honest with you. But let me tell you what I picked for like an embellishment to go on the front. So this is the stamps that I was referring to, Flowers of Friendship, and it retired in May of 2023. So I am sorry about that. And I had some twine here, and if I didn't lose it, I hope I didn't lose it. I'll show you what I did with the twine, unless that's another, maybe that's another one. No, that's another one. Never mind. You're going to have to wait. All right. So I used these little flowers here, and where are they? It's a little scary sometimes. Oh, I see what I did. I sort of combined 2 baskets together. Okay, so I had Pretty in Pink ink and Pretty in Pink blends and, Old Olive blends. All right. And this piece here did not come from that stamp set that I just showed you. That piece came, came from this one, Elements of Text, which is still available online, and I love it. I love these kinds of stamps that just show you text and script and whatever. And I love splotches. I know it sounds a little odd, but I love splotches. So I think I've got 2 different things mixed up together in here from 2 different cards. That's why I got confused. Imagine that, me confused. Okay, so what I did was I stamped these flower stamps here. Can you see those? I'm gonna make sure I'm in camera now that I'm using this slightly new setup. So I use these, and there is a punch, which is retired. This punch here, the Flowers and Leaves punch, which works with these flowers and leaves. So I pulled that out because I was really just looking for something specific, and I couldn't find it among what was current, or at least what was current that I have. Like, I'm sure it's somewhere. All right, I think there's still some leaves in the bottom of that basket somewhere. Yep. And I used this splotch a little bit over here on this card. Just a little bit, not a lot. Okay, there's another flower. I think I made more than I needed. And I tried to keep them pretty light. That's why I used the petal pink. And I even toyed with the idea of going over the petal pink with the color lifter to make it even lighter. But sometimes I'm not sure how I like about that look. We had a color that retired when the new core colors came in. It was called Bridal Pink, Bridesmaid something, bride something. Everybody hated it. They said it looked dirty. Well, to me, it looked vintage, and I liked it a lot. I'm not a big fan of petal pink because to me it's orangey. And if I wanted orangey, I'd get orange, not pink. So anyway, I still have to think about a sentiment. All right, and should probably think about that kind of soon. So I used the light colors, but still what I discovered was that for this look at least, I didn't like, our dies always leave a little bit and our punches always leave a little bit of white around the edges, and I have no problem with that at all. Very often you're putting it on a white card base and it blends in, but for this look I didn't want so much white, so I went around trying to trim as much of it off as I could. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch that, but I did wonder about distressing the flowers a little bit. Not a lot, and of course I can't really get into all the areas with the dauber. I thought about taking one of the blending brushes and going over the pink to make it look like the old pink that retired. What the heck was that called? I know it had the word bride knit, I think it did. So I'm just going to sort of grunge these up just a little bit. They'll still be pretty. And then I'll show you what I'm going to do with them. So I always tell people, especially with the YouTube channel, because it's so new, that I really appreciate it if you would watch my videos over there and here and give it a thumbs up or a like, depending on where you're watching. And in terms of YouTube, what really helps is if people subscribe. And what some people don't understand is that if you subscribe, it doesn't mean that I'm going to start blowing up your email. First of all, I don't do that anyway. If you're not really like a customer of mine, or you haven't been real active, I guess, in the groups, you know, and I don't know that you want to hear from me, I'm, you know, maybe going to send you something once a month, maybe. I'm not big on, you know, some of these demonstrators. To be honest, I'm on their lists because I like to see what they're doing, and some of them I get emails every day from them, and that I don't want to get an email every day from anybody, not even my close friends. I don't want to get an email from them every day. So please don't worry about that, but I really do need to have a certain number of subscribers, and if I ever want to start doing YouTube live videos, then I need to have more subscribers than I have now. I think the last time I looked I had like 10. The channel's, you know, only been up for a week or so, so I'm sure that will grow, but I would appreciate if you do that. Leaving a comment really helps. Here in the group, a lot of people just comment where they're from, and that's very helpful. You know, they all YouTube and Facebook, they have their analytics, and it's like they literally decide that if somebody doesn't comment on every single video, or there aren't multiple comments on every video, it means nobody likes me, which is, you know, that's a little sad. Makes me a little sad, and I don't think that that's necessarily true either, at least I hope not. So anyway, it helps if you can do that. I would appreciate it. I think I'm still missing a leaf, but I'm not going to go searching for it. Alright, so I'm not doing like a fantastic job of grunging these up, because, you know, we don't have all night, and you don't need to sit and watch that. Okay, I really do need to decide on a sentiment, though, and I hadn't pulled out any that I was really keen on. I'm looking over here in my last chance pile. Well, there's always happy birthday. This one now, well, here's is interesting. So this is a beach set, but it has a sentiment, enjoyed today, and I like that because that really could just apply to anything. And then on the inside it could say happy birthday. So I like sentiments like enjoy today, hello, things like that, because you can put those on a card, and if somebody's shopping for a card, they're going to say, well, hello is fine, because then I can put anything I want on the inside, and that is true. All I have to do now is find the stamp. There we go. So taking that from Beach Day, which is a very fun set. All right, in a minute I'll tell you about these two things that you can see over here on the right. Maybe you can see them. There you go. Let's see. So yeah, enjoy today could just apply to just about anything. So if it'll fit, I'm going to stamp it on this just because it's here, to be honest with you. And I'm going to stamp it in the gray granite. We're just going to kind of go with that color scheme. And then I'll just show you what I'm going to do so that it doesn't look too modern. Okay, so it's off center, which is okay because I'm going to trim it. The Y is a little bit far over to one side, but that's okay. I can live with it. So all I'm going to do is just trim this down kind of small. You know, I better leave that there. I was thinking of, you know, dovetailing it, but I don't really have much room there. Let's see. This is when you decide to trim it, you keep getting smaller and smaller until finally there's nothing left and you realize you got carried away. Alright, so I'm just giving it that little flag tip instead of using that die for what it was. Alright, so that's going to go here. Yep, that's going to go here. There we go. And then it might be overkill, but my thought was I was going to bend these in, and I know if you're going to stuff it in an envelope, it's not going to retain that shape anyway, but I like to start out that way, and you know, whatever happens, happens. And I'm just going to double them up, so I'm going to put one of the small ones inside one of the large ones, and I'm just taking my thumb, really my thumbnail almost, and just sort of manipulating them. And then I'm just going to put a dot of glue in the center here, so I didn't even really have to color that, did I? And then offset this a little bit and put the other one there. And while I'm holding it, just to make sure it sets, I'll just play around with the petals a little bit more. And then, you know what? This is from a different card too. There we go. Excuse me. Okay, so we want that to be seen. So I think I'll put that down first so that I don't cover it up or put flowers in the spot where I want that to be. I'm going to want that to be kind of like middle-ish, low middle-ish, and not hanging over the edge so it won't get crushed in the envelope. Okay, and then probably what I should do, I stuck glue on there, but that's not going to work. I'm going to take a dimensional, one of the mini dimensionals, and I'm just going to stick that under there so that it's at the same height. Oops, it's still on my finger. Get off, there we go. So that they're both at the same height now, okay? And now that I see this on here, I do like the way this looked. I wasn't really 100% sure if I was going to like it, to be honest with you. But I'm okay with it. So I'm going to put a little glue here, and then I'm going to put one of the petals on. So it's kind of coming up between. And then I'll put a little more glue here and just a little there to make sure that stays where it's supposed to be. And I'm going to start with one of them right there. I'm just going to hold it down for a couple of seconds. This is the Tombow Mono Glue. I don't have a bottle on the desktop, I don't think. That I just transfer into this because it's a little bit easier. And in classes, it works out better because people were using just way too much glue and sometimes getting very frustrated because they ruined their project with glue that wouldn't come off, or just had it all over their hands and then they touched things and they got glue on that. So it works much better in these fine tip pen things, unless you're using or unless you're making something that requires lots of glue. Then this might take too long and get a little annoying, but I'm liking them. Having to fill them up every couple of weeks or whatever, I'm not liking that, but they do, I'm wishing that some of the glues that they sell they would make in a larger size, but they don't. Okay, so again, we're just going to put that in the center, put that in and offset the leaves, hold it down for a couple of seconds, then maybe this time, I think I'm going to go with the bigger leaf again and then just see where I'm at. I'm going to put some glue back there. Put the leaf there. Okay, so I'm going to put that one there. And again, you just have to kind of play with it. You know, sometimes I dry fit it and I lay it all out before I do any gluing, and then sometimes I just don't have the patience for that and I just glue it, and I either like it or I don't. Alright, and I'm thinking one more that kind of comes here and maybe just covers the end of that just the tiniest bit, so that we don't see the actual edge of the sentiment. And I'm still sitting here, just so that you know, trying to think of the name of that ink, because it's making me crazy that I can't think of it. Where's my dauber? There it is. Okay. I had a student years ago. Her name was Sarah. I guess I can say her first name. And when we were doing craft projects and there was a bunch of stuff on the table and she couldn't find what she wanted, she used to take her finger and go like this. Like she was like a divining rod almost, you know, like she was looking for it. And I thought it was so cute. And for some reason, I find myself doing that now sometimes. And I just think of Sarah because it's probably been, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years since I've seen her. So I don't know what she's up to. Sweet, sweet little girl, though. All right, so I won't need any more of these, just one, I think. And these I can just save for something else. Actually, I could use that on as an embellishment for a journal pocket. So again, I talk about my journals. I have a YouTube channel for the journals. Excuse me. But when I started that YouTube channel, it was really intended to be a channel for people, at least this is the way I thought of it. It was intended by me to be a channel for people who are already starting their journey of junk journaling or journaling, making journals. And so I would talk about like the brands. I would say, oh, this is, Tim Holtz this, or this is that. And, then I have people from my card making classes or whatever who might watch it. And they're saying, why do you keep talking about this guy, Tim? Who's he? They don't know what I'm talking about. And I realize that, I probably need to start making some more for beginner journalers. Okay, so there we go. And you know what? I really am liking that. And again, I'd like to hear what people think of it. I don't think I overdid the distressed. I've seen some samples of cards like this where they're like just torn to heck. They look like they've been through the ringer. I won't bother putting in a liner tonight, but I'll put one in and post a picture just because I don't want to take too much of your time. So that is card number 1. And let me just set a few things out of the way here. Don't lose these because I think I'm going to want them. All right. Just don't want to separate that stamp from its case. It's hard to imagine, but if I don't put things away or put them at least where they sort of belong, I actually can lose things. It happens. Crazy, right? All right, now I'm piling things up here, which is never a good idea because then we have what I like to call a craft room avalanche that happens, and it usually happens in the middle of one of my videos. Okay, so next, this is still not the card that I was referring to before, though. At least I don't think it is. No. All right, so for this one, I did start. Sometimes I do this by accident, too. I intend to just get all of my ingredients, so to speak, all of my materials out for a card that I want to make, and then I just get so into it that I start making it. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No. I'm not supposed to make this by myself here in the kitchen or wherever I am. I have to wait and show this card to people. So I'm down there and I did the embossing and I'm like, I got my brushes and I'm coloring and I said, oh my gosh, stop. You're not supposed to be doing this. So for this card, I chose to keep it a little bit vintagey. I used the new, semi-new, basic beige instead of a color, okay? And this is Mossy Meadow. I almost said Mossy Moon. I knew that wasn't right. Mossy Meadow, which is a favorite of mine. I love this color. It was a kind of a Christmas color one year, but it just came back as a color that's just here all the time. So for the basic beige, what I did was I used the distressed brick embossing folder, and then I used this stamp right here, and I stamped a little bit, and one of those splotches that I showed you earlier, I think it was this one, and I just did a little stamping there. So I'm kind of distressing it as it is, okay? And just keeping it fairly basic. So again, I could distress this all up, but maybe I won't, all right? Maybe in this case I won't. I sort of feel like I want to do the edges, though. I won't, what am I trying to say? I won't crumble them up. I won't tear them or cut them or distress them in that way. I'll just add some ink to the edges. Okay, that's as far as I'll go. if nothing else because it takes too long. All right, I'm going to put that aside because if I don't, I'm going to think it's time to glue that on, and it's not time to glue it yet. Because I stopped myself in time that I didn't put the last color on that I wanted to put on. I'm thinking that my crumb cake pad needs re-inking because I'm having a hard time getting color out of it. And I didn't want to use a dark color like early espresso or pecan pie because that's a little too much. Okay. So I started out with some green in the background. No, it's upside down. You can barely tell, but you can sort of make out some words. I think I can. It could be in my head. But I wanted it this way. The pink's on this side, and then I did just a little bit of green down here, and then I wanted to add kind of like sky, but not necessarily sky, and I thought I would use the balmy blue for that. Now this brush looks like I've used it with some dark things, so what I'm going to do is take a piece of scrap paper here and do my best to just, clean it off a little bit, make sure that it's not too dark, and it doesn't look like it is, so I think I'm okay. So if you've never used our blending brushes before, you just kind of circle it around on the ink pad. But then what you want to do is you want to start off the thing that you're coloring. Because sometimes, let me see if I can like fake one. You get like a blob like that, and you would think that maybe you could blend out the blob, but you can't. It stays there forever and annoys you. So that's why it makes a lot of sense to kind of tap it off and then come on. Because you can always add color, but you can't subtract color. So you're much better off starting light. All right, and then I think we're just going to do that. I didn't want to do too much, just kind of blend it in a little bit to the green here, and maybe a tiny bit up here, blend it into the pink a tiny bit. And so I'm leaving a little bit of the beige in the center that's uncolored. So I did the same thing with the pink, and I did the same thing with the green. For the green, I used Old Olive, and for the pink, I used Pretty in Pink. It was just a pretty in pink kind of day. All right, so now I can put this on. Now, here's the funny thing. So my initial plan, before I ran this through the embossing folder and just didn't want to do it again, my initial plan that I had in mind was to stamp a floral image on this first, color it first, and then emboss. But I ran it through the embossing machine and I started doing my coloring and then went, oh, where's my flower? So I said, okay, no big deal, and I just decided that I would do something different. So I'll show you in a minute what I did, and then we can decide which one we like better. Sorry for the noise. I know some people are bothered by that. I'll try to go lightly, but I'm trying to get it into some of the grooves here because of the embossing. I want to make sure this sticks. I don't ever want to send a card to somebody that falls apart while they're taking it out of the envelope. That's just bad. Don't want that to happen. Okay. This little thing that I do where I bend and wiggle, it actually helps me move the card or whatever I'm putting on. If it was a little bit crooked, it's better and easier than trying to peel it back off, because sometimes that doesn't go well. All right, so there we go. Oh, and my journal, my YouTube for my journaling is called Love Me Some Paper Journals. Was not the original name. I had the original name. I had it for years. And I thought that by going down to the county and filing what they call a DBA, or doing business as, that it was mine. But that only happens if you file a limited liability corporation, and I didn't consider myself a corporation. So I didn't do that, and somebody else took my name, and it was a much nicer name, but what can you do? All right, so now, oh my gosh, where are they now? I tell you, I do scare myself sometimes. Did I put them up there? No, I didn't. Where the heck are they? Got them. Okay. So, I used the Flowers of Friendship, like I said. These flowers for the card we just made. And then this one here for this card that we're making now. Okay? And I also used that nested essential die. These are great dies, although I really just hacked it up. I would have been better off using, let's say, this one. But then you have to find a really small sentiment. and I didn't have one that I liked. Okay, so what I did, it's still in the basket. Oh my gosh. What I did was I stamped this flower twice, both times with Memento Black, but one time on white cardstock, basic white cardstock, and one time on vellum. Now, Stampin' Up! Sold vellum, and they retired it and stopped selling it. I don't know who retires vellum, right? So I'm sorry, but I went to Amazon and I bought me some vellum, and I hope that Stampin' Up! Brings their vellum back, because I would love to buy it from them. It was a very good quality of vellum. This is pretty thin. Stampin' Up's vellum was literally called vellum cardstock, and it was much thicker than this. I liked it much better. Now, I've never stamped on vellum using anything but solvent or permanent or archival ink, so I wasn't sure if this would smear or not. So I stamped it a couple of hours ago, and I also took a heat tool to it, and I think it's going to be okay. Now, you can always color. If you're going to use alcohol markers, and this sounds like it's the reverse of what it should be, if you use alcohol markers, use water-based ink. If you're using watercolor or some type of any type of moisture, then you want to use the permanent ink because it won't smear it. But if you use any other ink besides the Memento, or if you use the alcohol, what am I trying to say? If you use the solvent-based inks like Ranger Permanent or StazOn Permanent, these markers will smear them. So since I forgot to stamp it on first, and I think I might almost like this better anyway, I was trying to decide which one would I want to put on here. And then I even wondered if I could do both and like line them up one on top of the other and maybe only color the bottom one. So I'm going to color the bottom one first so that I can see what I think. And then we'll go from there. So I'm using the Pretty in Pink. I am, aren't I? Yes, I am. Okay. And I'm starting with my light. Sometimes I start with the dark. Everybody has a different way of doing it. I don't concern myself. But just so that you know, when you have a stamp like this that has these lines in it, I call those artist hints. So that means that the Stampin' Up! Artists are telling you this would be a place that you might want to add some shadowing. So what I could have done is I could have started with the dark Pretty in Pink and gone over those lines first. And maybe I wanted to make them really dark, so I went over a few times. Maybe I'd come around here and do a line of the dark, and down on the bottom where it might be darker, and along on the left side where it might be darker because maybe the sun is coming, the other way or whatever. And then, and this is why they call them blends, I would come in with the light marker and sort of take that dark color and blend it or drag it out so that it's not showing up as being so dark anymore, but you do see the difference, but you're blending it out so that it's kind of like going from dark to medium to light, if that makes sense. And if you can see that on camera, I honestly don't know. Sometimes, it's really hard. I lowered my camera too on purpose, but then I feel like I'm in the way, and if I lean forward too much, then I hit the camera with my head, which is not good. So this is, what a lot of people do. They do it this way, and it's fine. Sometimes I start with the light, and then I might come in with the dark afterwards. So now here's the dark. So this time I'm doing it backwards. I'm doing it just the opposite. And I'm adding the lines. But they're not going to appear quite as blended as the one on the right did. Again, I don't know how noticeable that is. I think it's probably more noticeable to me being right here, in the room with it, so to speak. So now I'm going to take the dark, and I'll go first with the dark. This little piece over here, because it's in the back, I might make that a little bit darker. I used to just sometimes play a little music in the background, but I guess you can get away with that on Facebook, but on YouTube they'll catch you for a copyright infringement unless you're playing your own music or something. But YouTube does have music that they can provide for you. I don't know if you have to pay for it or not, to be honest with you. I haven't delved that far into it. I was mentioning last week or maybe the week before, with the exception of a couple of new blends that I bought, I've had like this one probably 5-6 years. I started collecting the blends a little at a time. When I first became a demonstrator, I didn't get them. When I was a customer, I don't know if they even had them when I was a customer. Maybe they were. Maybe they did. I just thought, they're a little pricey and, they're a marker. What's the big deal? But I really do enjoy them. I enjoy coloring with them. I love the smoothness of them. There are certainly alternatives, and I've showed those. I've done some videos to show those. I actually did a coloring video showing the difference between the blends, the colored pencils, the blender pens with ink, and the colored pencils with the blender pens. And I think I'm going to redo it as its own video, because some people might just like to watch that but might not want to wait, half an hour to see it. You can fast forward through things for sure. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but if you're watching on an iPad, if you put your thumb kind of on the top right hand or top left hand corner a little bit further in, like let's say this is my iPad screen, you put your thumb here and hold it there, it speeds it up so the person talks like this. And you watch what they're doing, but they're talking like this. It's kind of cool. So what if we put this over this? I kind of like it. But then, do I really have to fussy cut all of this out? Or can I... There is a die. I think there's a die. Oh, no, there is no die, because this came with a punch. So there is no die. That might explain why I only use this flower by stamping it. But what if I did like what I call kind of a rough fussy cut? Like I'm not going to go around every single edge, but maybe kind of like that. And then like that. But, not try to cut it out totally. What if I did that? So we'll kind of look at it both ways. Well, that time I got a little closer than I intended to. Whoops. And if you move the paper while you're cutting, instead of moving the scissors, you avoid getting hacky looking marks like that. And I have learned that, but sometimes I'm just not thinking. It really does make a difference. You move the paper and you get smooth lines. You're never too old to learn something new. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I keep saying at one point I'm going to start doing in my journal a what did I learn today? But then I have to really remember, because sometimes it's very subtle. I have to really become more mindful and think about it. What did I learn today? And it's not, always something educational necessarily. If you've never watched the show CBS Sunday Morning, it's on CBS on Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock, you're missing something. All right, so now here, of course, I cut this wacky because I was intending for it to just be a scrap. But now I'm sort of thinking, wouldn't it be a little cool? I don't know, I don't like the white showing underneath. What do you think? I'm just not sure. But I do like the vellum. So what if, I don't feel like I have to, what am I trying to say? I don't feel like I have to cut that out totally. Plus you'd have these itty bitty skinny things. I don't feel like I have to do that, but I'm wondering, I just threw my blending brushes like literally on the floor somewhere. What if I'm looking to see if I have a blending brush that's kind of primarily brown. Sometimes I use brown and green for the same, which doesn't make sense because they're not the same, but all right, that's not too bad. Doesn't have any too much gunk on it. What if I were to, this is just experimentation now, folks. That's all. I'm just basically experimenting. So what if I were to just do a little light blending just to cut down that white so it's not quite so white? I'm using Crumb Cake, which is, I think it's the lightest of the brown shades. And even Gray Granite has hints of brown in it, but it's more gray than it is brown. And I am going over the flowers at the same time, so they're getting a little bit of distressing as well. Oops. I don't know if that's going to make too much of a difference or not. I still feel like I'm seeing a lot of white in some spots. And I don't feel like I'm darkening up the pink too much either. It's still staying kind of pretty. All right, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, save this for another day. Put this on here, but then possibly put a well-cut, a nicely cut piece of vellum. What do I do with it? So what if I just took a piece of vellum and cut it into a rectangle? So what if I glue that down and then put that over it? That's kind of different. Now the problem with vellum is that glue shows on vellum. So you really want to put the glue where it's not going to be seen. And in this case, I don't know where that would be because it's going to be seen everywhere. Now some people have said that the, what's it called? The Plus, Stampin' Seal Plus doesn't show up too much on vellum, but I don't think I have any, at least not right here. So maybe I'll have to play with that, and I don't want to do it right now because if you see globs of glue on your vellum, it's not pretty. It doesn't look right. So, and maybe, I was thinking I would pop it up, but maybe I won't. In case I do the vellum thing, then I won't want it popped up. Okay, all these big decisions that you have to make when you're crafting. It's amazing, isn't it? And maybe I really should have just fussy cut this whole thing out and even had all the skinny little stems and stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of okay with it after hitting it with the Crumb Cake ink. I think it kind of blends in enough. It's not screaming white at me, you know. And there's always just a little bit left on the brush that you can, do a little bit more if you want to. So there, I do like that. And then this, again, I'm not going to do the inside right. Oh, look at what I did. I did the card backwards. Don't you love it? Okay, so just so you know, very easy fix for that. You just cut this off and make another card base and glue this on top of it. Easy peasy. Ask me how I know, because I've done it before. Okay. So there we go. We have that is card number 2. And then we're kind of at an hour, but I think if I remember correctly, card number 3, assuming I can find it, was very simple. It was so simple that it's missing. I know I had 3 cards. I did. Didn't I? Oh, yes, I did. It had a cute heart on it and everything. Wait, what has happened here? What has happened here? Oh, it was so far behind me I couldn't see it. It was off to one side. All right, so I'll go ahead and do it. You can bug out if you need to. I try not to take an hour or longer than an hour. I used to do 30 minutes and I couldn't get much done. I just really couldn't. All right, so this is Pecan Pie, and this is also the basic beige. Let's see if we can get it on straight this time, huh? So this one might take some time, except I started doing this one too. So this is one that I call a scrap buster card. All right, and what that means is that I'm going through my bag of scraps and I'm pulling out all kinds of little scraps of DSP, and I'm using them to create a card. So I cut them, some of them at an angle, some of them not, and now I don't really remember what order they were in, except obviously this one couldn't go here. The longer ones had to go across the longer sections. And then there would be some that were skinnier that went in a different direction, so the wide part was at the top. And then there would be one like this, and then this one was really just going to be, you know, almost nothing. So I guess I can do that because, yep, I think I need to stick a pin in it. Okay. I started doing it, and I had to stop myself that time too. I just tend to get a little carried away sometimes. So I do want to get the glue right up against the edges, because if I don't, then little corners are going to start popping up, and that's annoying. So instead of doing just each piece, I'm just going to put a bunch of glue on and then add more as I need it. I want to try to get them right up against each other, but sometimes they move on me and I don't notice it until it's too late. All right, so then we'll get some more glue down. Okay, I did not put that one far enough up though, so I am going to have to pull it up real quick and slide it. I think it'll still slide for me. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, the glue is pretty fast drying. You really do have to be careful. It gives you what I like to call wiggle room, but not a ton of wiggle room. All right, so because I heard some ripping there, I know I'm going to need some more glue. All right. At least it's proof positive that it's nice, strong glue, that's for sure. And it is. All right, so we'll come in with this one next, which is just the flip side of that one there. So typically when I make scrap buster cards, I'll do a hashtag scrap buster card, because some people are looking for those, and that way they can find it easily, either here or on YouTube. All right, we'll go this way. I'm just going to get glue everywhere now and just finish it up. And you just want to make sure that you are hanging over the edges. That's why I had to pull that one over, because, or pull it off, because it was not hanging over the edges. Yeah, see, and then if I pull it one way and I don't have a white spot over here, then I pull it the other way and I have a white spot over there. It's not tragic. It's not crucial that you not have that. Okay, and then that one, I'm going to get a little more glue there because it's going to be such a small piece after I trim it. Okay, so I'm just going to give that a good press. Maybe go over it a little bit with my bone folder. And there are some spots there where I can see white. You could take your watercolor pencils, actually, and just kind of get in there and add a little color so it's not noticeable if you're concerned. I didn't have any cardstock downstairs when I made this, so I actually just used, you know, printer paper. It's a little flimsy, but since I'm just using it for this, it was okay. I wouldn't advise it, but it was okay. So it's kind of interesting to flip it over and see what it looks like without all the pieces hanging off. So isn't that pretty? And this is just a mishmash of some current paper, some retired paper, some really retired paper. And I did want colors, and I didn't really think too hard about distressing this in any way. My attitude was I was just going to kind of leave it the way it was. I think I will do some of the coloring around the edges just because I want it to... I do want it to blend in and just look a little bit more cohesive. And sometimes I do this with a color, and it's not for the purpose of distressing. It's for the purpose of accenting or outlining. And if this were DSP that had, you know, a common color, which it definitely does not, then I might pick that common color and use that to do this with. So if they all had blueberry bushel in them, which I think only 2 of them do, I might do blueberry bushel. And the thing with scrap buster cards that you do have to be careful is just to make sure that you've got enough glue, because otherwise one little corner starts to come up and the whole thing kind of comes apart. So I usually go back and check and double check. And there is something about this, doing this on the edge, that just sort of gives it a finished look, whether you're using a pretty color or you're just using brown or gray. Alright, so we're going to put that there. This is going to be on the inside. So far it's facing in the right direction. That could change at any minute though. I could just turn it around and screw that up too, but it's all so fixable. And I don't even consider it a waste of paper, because the half sheet that's left over after I cut this off can certainly be used as a card topper or for something else. So I don't feel like I'm wasting paper. And I don't get embarrassed about making mistakes anymore, because it reminds you to check to make sure your card's in the right direction before you glue things down. So we all learn by mistakes. If you're lucky, you can learn by mine and not make too many of your own. I'm not good at getting my paper on straight, which is why I developed this little zhuzhing technique, because it helps me straighten out the paper without making a mess. Now, I wanted to put a doily on this, and Stampin' Up! Had doilies at one point, but they were blue and brown, and I didn't want that. These are actually much older doilies that I found at a thrift shop, but I realized it was much bigger than I wanted to use. So I honestly wasn't sure if I wanted to maybe just use a portion of it as a embellishment, because right now it's like it's covering the whole card, and it would even interfere with it going into the envelope. I did go ahead and stamp Hello Friend as a sentiment, and originally I was going to distress that all up, you know, with my scissors and everything, but then I decided not to do that on this card, so I'm just going to give it a little trim. I don't think I want to trim any off the bottom, and I will do this to it, but that's it. And then I found a button. A friend of mine gave me her grandmother's button jar, and I was so touched by that, but then I just felt like the jar was unique in itself, and she really didn't think she'd use the buttons, or she had taken what she knew she would use, but I emptied it out and I gave her back her grandmother's jar, and I think she was happy with that. So this was embossed with the what's it called? It reminds me, think of like Wide Whale corduroy, but it's called Narrow. It's a 3D embossing folder. Yep, I probably left it downstairs because I've got the cut and emboss machine on the kitchen counter. I'll figure it out. And I ran it through the die after I embossed it. So if I had done it before, like if I had cut out the heart and then embossed the heart, it would be much thicker. But it's not as thick because I did it sort of arse backwards, as they say. All right, but I love the little heart, and I do like that embossing folder a lot. So I've got the button. I wish this was just a tiny bit smaller, because I feel like if I was putting something big down over here, I would feel okay using half of it, but I'm really not putting anything big, and I don't think I can trim it without losing. I think it'll end up looking unfinished and weird. Well, you know, you don't know till you try, right? So we're going to just go ahead and cut it in half. I use a lot of doilies in my journals as well. Okay, and this one's like already kind of yellowed with age, because like I said, it really is old. I got it at a thrift store, and it was a little bit, if you compared it to new ones, you could see the difference. It's just not white, but I'm going to just give it a little more distressing, not a ton. And let's see if I like that. The problem is I don't have anything to cover that up with so that it's not, you know, peeking out. Oh, I don't know. If I folded it like that, and maybe like that a little bit so both sides were showing, and then put the heart, then I'm covering up the point. I like that. I think I can do that. Okay, we'll do that. Let's do that. I'm getting slap happy. All right, so we're going to glue that on the back of it so you can't see the point. And I think this time I'm going to use some dimensionals. And when I'm doing something like this, I will just put the dimensionals down over the part that's kind of sticking up as another measure of stability. Whoops. All right. The Take Your Pick tool comes in really handy for that too. Yes, it does. All right, now where do I want to put... Oh, I know where I was going to put it. Okay. So I put that down, and then I took the button and I ran some of our linen thread through it and then tied a bow. And I wanted to put that on here, just like that. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and glue this down. I thought about gluing it down like a little crooked, just because. Sometimes I don't have any real reason for why I do things. So like it's like as if it were a little tag hanging off. And then that glue I don't want to use to hold a button down, but our glue dots are strong little suckers. They truly are. So I'm going to put a glue dot on the back of that button and hope that I can get it to come off without my Take Your Pick tool. Well, I have fingernails this week, so okay, fingernails will work. And then I'm just going to take that and put it right there. What do you think? I like it. Okay, so it took a little bit longer, not as long as it would have taken if I hadn't pre-done some of the stuff though. So let's take a look-see here. Let's try to clear the decks a little bit. I do like the doily now. I don't like that cut part so much, but you know, it's fine. So we have card number 1, card number 2, like it matters if I put them in the right order, right? And card number 3. They're not all going to fit in the screen because I lowered the camera. So see, it's a toss-up, and I don't have one of those fancy setups where I can zoom in and zoom out. So if I want you to see better what I'm doing, the camera's lower, but then you can't always see every single thing. So those are our 3 cards for tonight. A little vintagey, but not over the top. And like I said, I'd love to hear your comments about what you think of it. This one is probably the least vintagey because of the bright colors, but I wanted to do a scrap buster card. I try to do some of those every once in a while. All right, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again next week. Check out the YouTube channel. If you're watching on the replay, thank you for doing that. And I will see you 1 week from tonight. Take care and have a great weekend.